In probably no country in the world is it pleasant to be in prison, but anyone imprisoned in CECOT in El Salvador actually finds themselves in absolute hell, because it is considered the worst prison in the world. To help you understand what has earned this institution its reputation, today we'll show you a typical day inside CECOT. CECOT, the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo, is a massive maximum security prison where only El Salvador's worst and most dangerous criminals are locked away. And that says a lot because until recently, El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world. Out of every 100,000 residents, there were over 80 murders each year, because violence in the streets had spiraled out of control and gangs were killing dozens of people every single day. The government of El Salvador eventually cracked down hard and built CECOT in 2021. Since then, up to 40,000 people have been imprisoned there at the same time, serving sentences of up to 700 years. Most of them will likely never leave the prison again.
Now when an inmate walks into this door, he never leaves.
Their daily life in the maximum security prison is a never-ending nightmare, because the prisoners only notice that morning has begun in their steel and concrete cells when the guards come by to hand out breakfast. In the morning, a doctor also distributes medication to sick inmates. The cells, each holding around 80 prisoners in 4-tiered bunk beds without mattresses or sheets, where they sleep directly on bare steel, don't even have windows. This means the inmates cannot look outside and don't get any fresh air. And this is in temperatures of up to 35 degrees Celsius. In fact, the cell size was originally designed for just 10 people, but as the prison director explained with a laugh in an interview, you can squeeze up to 100 people into a single cell. On the menu for breakfast, just like for all other meals, are usually unseasoned cold noodles, rice, flatbread and hard-boiled eggs, or tasteless soup. Meat is never served.
No existe un menú que te traiga pollo o carne para el privado de libertad. No existe.
Every meal is weighed precisely to ensure no inmate receives too much food. For security reasons, prisoners are not given any cutlery, not even spoons, so they are forced to eat their meager meals with their hands. The meals are prepared in the prison kitchen by inmates, but these are petty criminals from other prisons, brought to CECOT specifically for this work. None of the dangerous criminals in CECOT are supposed to have the privilege of preparing food. For their morning hygiene, each cell has only 2 sinks and 2 toilets, which must be used in full view of all fellow inmates. There are no showers. There are no curtains for privacy either. After breakfast, the prisoners have nothing left to do but sit in their cramped, stuffy cells, let the day pass, and wait for the next meal. In CECOT, each inmate has only about 0.58 square meters of space, which is far below the legally required 3.4 square meters. Because the cells are also permanently lit by bright neon lights, inmates hardly have any sense of time, and there are no clocks, no radios, and no televisions in the cells for entertainment. The only reading material allowed is 2 Bibles per cell, as required by law. The grounds of CECOT cover 166 hectares, making it larger than 232 soccer fields. It is surrounded by 2 electric fences, 2 massive concrete walls, and a total of 19 watchtowers. Despite the prison complex being so huge, inmates spend almost the entire day crammed together in the tightest of spaces. In fact, they are only allowed to leave their windowless cells for 30 minutes per day to exercise in the corridor. For this, they are taken out in groups with both handcuffs and leg shackles. But even during exercise, they are heavily restricted. All kinds of fitness equipment, like dumbbells, are forbidden out of fear that the prisoners would otherwise use them to injure each other. If you think all these measures make CECOT a safe prison without violence among inmates, you're mistaken. Almost daily there are clashes between prisoners.
How many people did you kill? I do not remember.
And even though no one has weapons, it often becomes very dangerous, and that's why CECOT is monitored by 600 heavily armed soldiers and 250 police officers. And they certainly don't treat the inmates gently either. Among other things, they often shut off the water and electricity in the cells from outside, making the situation even more unbearable for the prisoners. According to human rights organizations, there are also frequent cases of abuse and torture in CECOT, and some have even compared the maximum security prison to a concentration camp. There are even reports that inmates are punished by being locked in metal cages and dunked underwater. These acts are not the misconduct of a few guards, but rather part of the system. The inmates are deliberately dehumanized in this prison. It begins with the fact that every prisoner has their head shaved completely every 5 days. Sometimes they are all driven into the courtyard or corridor, where they are forced to sit motionless for hours, crammed together with their hands behind their heads. The goal of all this is that the inmates no longer feel like human individuals. Those who stand out or cause trouble are punished further by being locked in a small, dark concrete cell for days, where they sit completely isolated in total darkness. Even things that probably exist in almost every other maximum security prison in the world to provide at least some small variety or distraction do not exist in CECOT. Here, prisoners are not allowed visits from family members or even from lawyers. Making phone calls or writing and receiving letters is also forbidden, and throughout the entire prison, there is no cell phone reception. The inmates therefore have absolutely no contact with the outside world. Only those classified as not too dangerous get a bit of variety, but definitely not the kind anyone would wish for, because the prisoners with this so-called privilege are taken during the day to construction sites, factories and plantations, where they are forced into hard labor. El Salvador's president euphemistically calls this forced labor a training program in which the inmates pay back the damage they have caused to society. After a day of hard work, the prisoners who are allowed out through this supposed training program return to their cells, where of course they get almost no sleep before the next exhausting day. Before entering again, however, they must go through a full body scan and are searched thoroughly to ensure they cannot smuggle in any items. An escape from this hell is considered impossible, because in addition to the fact that prisoners are strictly monitored by guards and state-of-the-art technology, the maximum security prison is also located in the middle of nowhere. Even if someone somehow managed to get out, they would be caught again within a very short time. And so the inmates have no choice but to spend every single day from morning until night in their cells, waiting for death.
We have made a commitment to the people of El Salvador that they will never be released to the communities.
Even though most citizens in El Salvador are probably happy that the government has been cracking down hard on gangs for some time now, and even locking up members in CECOT without explanation or court order, there is also criticism of the approach and of the prison conditions in this maximum security facility. Because in the first 7 months alone after CECOT opened, 90 inmates died there. The government, however, continues to stand by its hardline policy, and the president of El Salvador even made jokes about the inhumane prison conditions, asking whether money should be taken away from children's hospitals just to buy shoes or tuxedos for inmates. But despite the critical voices, nearly 90% of the people in the country support the CECOT concept, because within just 1 year, the number of homicides in the country dropped by almost 60% after the government began locking up gang members en masse in CECOT. The brutal concept at least seems to have an effect. But what do you think? Do you find such a prison appropriate, or do you believe these people should be punished in a different way?